In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, two brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, John Flack and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Hello, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies, then talk about them. Today, my usual co-host, John Flack, cannot be here with us, but very familiar voice, and you're in good hands here. You're with Bryan Frye today. Bryan, how are you doing, man?
Oh, I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to have you back and in the fold. And you know who else is here? This is a great lineup, I should say, because we've got Andrew Newman from Palm Springs, California, where the architecture is beautiful, the sun feels good, and the movie critiques are also good. How's it going, Andrew?
Pretty good out here in Long Beach, California, but I appreciate the
swing and a miss.
I appreciate the shout out there, and I do have to say the architecture in Palm Springs is amazing.
I blended Palm Beach and Palm Springs together. I'm leaving that in. It's okay. I don't care if people know I messed up.
I think it's great. Keep going.
So today we got a great movie. We got a great guest. So let's get to know this guest a little bit. Andrew, are you ready for some hard-hitting, deeply intensive, personal questions that are going to let the viewer into your life?
Oh, definitely. Always.
Okay. What is the hardest you've ever laughed in a movie?
Something 43.
Movie 43?
Movie 43. And while it's a movie that has a bunch of vignettes with tons of great actors in it, but there's one specific scene where Hugh Jackman has testicles on his chin. And that scene made me laugh so hard in the movie theater. Living out here in California, I'm able to go see movies before they're released sometimes. And I actually saw that about 6 months before it came out in theaters. And the entire theater just laughed so hard seeing Hugh Jackman with testicles on his chin.
So this is a sight gag then, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is his chin is testicles.
I haven't seen this movie. I'm curious to see it, not just for, obviously, chin testicles, but more so for also just because the short vignettes that have lots of stars in it. That sounds interesting.
There's tons of other things in that movie that are hilarious. It's just that is the one that sticks out. But I know there's another one that if I start thinking about it, that is pretty up there too. It's got some really good. If you want to laugh hard, it's a good thing to see.
This is also the second podcast in a row that Hugh Jackman's been brought up. I mean, basically a god at this point, right?
Fry, what about you, man?
It's the segment in the credits of Superbad where it shows all of the that that he had been drawing. He talks about having that affliction where he's like, I couldn't touch pen to paper without drawing a dick. And it was this montage of dick pictures. It still makes me laugh. But I was like, it was a funny movie anyway, but my abdomen hurt so bad from laughing through the whole movie. And then this montage of pictures that he had drawn. And yeah, that slayed me.
Drawings of penises will do it for you.
That's a stereotypically guy answer, but it really was funny.
So between the two of us, we've gone with veiny penis drawings and chin testicles. Ross, what do you have?
Hardest laugh in a movie for me, it's going to sound pretty PG compared to that, but it was Rat Race, man. The air control tower, when the car gets pulled up, the air control tower, and it's one long gag of this Jeep that they try and pull down an air control tower, and the Jeep ends up getting pulled up the tower instead. It's Seth Green, and I actually don't remember the other guy's name right off the top of my head, but really funny stuff. And the guy has his tongue infected from a piercing, so he can't talk. So it's comedy gold. I laughed so hard my sides actually hurt in the theater. So
I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, I hope I didn't spoil a really good moment in it.
No. The exact opposite. You encouraged me to want to check it out.
Okay, that's good. I do recommend it. Valentine's Day is close, though. And what is the best couples movie to rewatch for you and Lisa, Andrew?
True Romance. Okay, so when Quentin Tarantino first got started, he had written 2 scripts, Reservoir Dogs and True Romance. The director of True Romance, I'm forgetting his name, he's pretty famous. He met Tarantino and he read both scripts and he said, hey, I want to buy both of these and make them. And Tarantino said, no, you get to pick one. You make that. I'm going to take the money from that and make the other one. He picked True Romance, and it's got an amazing cast. Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, James Gandolfini, Christopher Walken has a great scene in there. I'm forgetting so many, like Brad Pitt's in there. Like the cast is amazing. And Tarantino always gets asked if he's going to make like a romance movie. And he always says, I wrote True Romance.
You had me at Christopher Walken.
I'll also toss in Dennis Hopper, Val Kilmer, and Gary Oldman, who all had amazing parts in that movie.
Thank you. And it was Dennis Hopper who was. So Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken have just one of the all-time amazing scenes together in that movie. And it's about the history of Moorish occupation in Italy.
What movie did you see because you had to, or like were pressured into seeing? Maybe you didn't want to see this movie, but then you found out this movie's good. In fact, I love it.
Smiley Face. It's got Anna Faris. It's a stoner movie. And I know that doesn't sound like something you'd have to twist my arm into seeing, but it wasn't one of those things that it was described well beforehand. It was just like, watch this movie and kind of like forced to watch it. You know, I wasn't really told beforehand. And at first, the way it starts off, I couldn't tell if I was going to like it. And it is fantastic. Highly recommend Smiley Face.
It was in your wheelhouse and you didn't know it.
Yes.
The guilty pleasure, now guilty pleasure, at the time I was drugged to it, but just made me go see Pitch Perfect. And I ended up laughing hysterically at it. And it is now one of my biggest guilty pleasures.
Wow, that is a guilty pleasure.
Also, if Jess ever leaves me, I will be looking up Anna Kendrick with a quickness.
Okay, and what is the last movie that you saw?
The last movie that I saw was Ant-Man and the Wasp, because it just came to Netflix. And since I missed it in the theaters, once I realized it was going to come to Netflix, I decided to wait instead of illegally downloading it and watching it that way.
Wait, it came to Netflix?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I wasted $1.99 on Redbox.
Point and laugh.
Oh, man, I'll never get that $2 back.
Well, not only that, but think about it. You had to also the opportunity cost of you having to go to the Redbox, get it, and then take it back to Redbox. Like, it's more than $2, Russell.
Oh, this is great. Up there with the greatest mistakes of my life that I really have to reevaluate. Oh, man. I know when I'm in my deathbed, I'm going to look back at that and regret that Ant-Man and the Wasp Redbox rental when I could have had it on Netflix already. Man. Anyway, today we're going to do a really good movie. Brian, what movie are we going to do today?
We are looking at Coming to America with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall.
That's right, man. That's right. It's a 1988 movie. It's a comedy here. And this is an unusual comedy in that it was highly successful at the box office. This grossed $128 million domestically in America in 1988. That's a ton of money for a comedy. It placed it third in the box office, coming behind Who Framed Roger Rabbit in second, and it placing ahead of Tom Hanks in Big.
What was first?
Rain Man is the movie.
Okay, so real quick on that. Think about that. Rain Man, Big, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Coming to America.
Those are your top four.
If you pitched any one of those movies nowadays, like something like one of those movies, there is no chance one of those movies would finish the year as one of the top 4 in the box office.
I don't think so either. That's interesting. It's a really
There's no superheroes.
No, but that's just a good point on Andrew's part. Those aren't the kind of movies that are grossing lots of money now. So that's a very interesting point.
I loved Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
And those are all good movies too, by the way. IMDb gives this a 7.0, so audiences do like it. The critics are a little tough on this and gave it 67% on the Rotten Tomatoes, and the audience score gives it an 85. So they come to the rescue a little bit here, and so the people like it. And, for a comedy, it comes with 2 surprise nominations for Oscars. It is nominated for Best Costume Design for Deborah Landis, and then Best Makeup, which there's a lot of really amazing makeup, which we'll get into later in this movie as well. So Rick Baker was nominated for his makeup work in here, and it's really impressive. So, guys, tell the people at home, had you seen this movie before? When was the last time you saw this movie? What were your thoughts coming back into it now? Andrew?
I actually kind of want to let Frye kick this off, if that's okay.
So I did not realize something going into watching this movie afresh. I've seen this movie several times before. It had been probably 10 plus years since I had seen it last. But what I realized very, very quickly is I've never seen this movie uncensored. I have watched it on USA, TNT, TBS, like whatever it was on television. I had no idea the actual movie I was missing. It's like somebody going in and watching Bad Boys with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith on syndicated television. And it's just a different movie at that point because, you miss a whole lot. So anyway, somewhere around The Royal Penis is Clean, I was like, oh my God, this is a completely different movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I have some does have a similar takeaway, but Andrew, go ahead, man.
Okay, so I'm pretty certain that I either saw this movie in theaters when it came out or very shortly on video with my family when it came out. And the reason why, one, because we love Eddie Murphy, and I'm certain that I've seen this movie a million times. But 2, is relating specifically to the scene of the topless women. I'm pretty sure that my mom put her hands over my eyes during that scene.
Don't look, Andrew.
Because I would have just turned 7.
That explains a lot.
I love it.
So so I hadn't actually watched it again in probably at least a decade. But that's saying watching it all the way through. It's one of those movies that, when you're like on vacation somewhere and you're flipping through all the channels in the hotel room, right? And you're like, oh, this sucks. And it's like, oh, Coming to America's on. So you watch like 15 minutes of it. So I'm pretty sure I've seen 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. I remember sometime in the last year that the scene with Samuel L. Jackson of explicitly watching that scene and then being like, okay, that scene's over. Now I can go.
I have a similar statement on that. I had actually never seen this movie from cover to cover or from start to finish. And it's not a book. I don't know why I said cover to cover. But I had only seen it in pieces through Comedy Central. It's a much better movie than I realized. Like Frye, I didn't know that it had all the profanity and other good parts of the movie that I just was missing. So it's a much better movie when you see it as it was intended to be seen.
I was going to say, even beyond that, though, and the reference that I think that would have been most appropriate, Frye, is quoting Barney Stinson when he says, it's like watching The Breakfast Club on TBS. Like, yep. That's what the issue is, right? Except I would argue that Coming to America actually holds up much better. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a much better movie in full, but it's still really funny without all of the, with being cleaned up. It's still a hilarious movie.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, like I said, I've watched on multiple channels. The shock and awe for me was more that I had watched this movie so many times and never seen the actual cut. Like, that was what blew me away, was like, wow, I felt like I was not necessarily an aficionado on the movie because, like I said, it had been a while since I'd seen it, but I've watched this movie several times and could quote some of it.
So it was your like a virgin moment.
Yep, touched for the very first time.
And on that note, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to get into spoiling this. So here to give us a little bit of insights is somebody else who came to America.
Hello, I am Zernab. I have come to great land of America. I truly love it here in this wonderful place. I love the long meat with corn on it mounted on stick from Carnival. My number one favorite thing here in America is the Retro Movie Roundtable. You can listen to it for free on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. And you can help the show by giving it a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Like the show on Facebook, email Retro Movie Roundtable at yahoo.com. I still have so much to learn about this country. Like, why do you crush such nice cars at monster truck rallies? Why are people so excited about ice rink in town? In my land, whole city is ice rink. Also, why do you put chewing gum under the chairs on the bus? Do you suspect that they will want it later? Is it like need a penny take penny at gas station? So tell your friends and family and loved ones about the Retro Movie Roundtable.
It's great to hear from our new friend from abroad and new to this country. So pretty cool to hear from him. Andrew, do you want to tell us about Coming to America? Refresh our memories. What happened in this movie?
First off, the plot really is pretty simple. And honestly, I would say the plot isn't the point of the movie. The point of the movie is the comedy that ensues in each scene, as opposed to the plot's just there to move things along. We have Prince Akeem from Zamunda, and we start off with literally seeing that he has people even wiping his butt. He can't get any peace, and he has every single thing done for him. And it is the day of his 21st birthday, and he is supposed to be set up in an arranged marriage. When he finally gets to the wedding ceremony, the bride basically can't think for herself. All she can say is, whatever you want. So he convinces his father to visit the world. So he decides to go to America, and he's got 40 days. He goes to America, and he just settles on Queens. And what he decides is that he doesn't want to marry the woman his parents have set up for him. He wants to find a new bride. So he finds the worst, dingiest apartment that he can with his partner in crime, Cindy, aptly played by Arsenio Hall. They move into a really, really bad apartment. They get a job at Mcdowell's, which is a McDonald's ripoff. And he ends up meeting the daughter of the owner, Lisa McDowell, and he ends up falling in love with her. She has a boyfriend played by Eriq Lasalle of ER fame. He is the son of the owners of Soul Glow, which is a Jerry curl product. Not having ever used Jerry curl product, I'm not quite sure if I'm using the correct terminology.
Yeah.
So what ends up really moving things along is Lisa and Akeem go on a date, and when they get back to Akeem's apartment, it turns out that Arsenio Hall has bought lots of expensive stuff, is very unhappy because he doesn't want Lisa to know that he is wealthy. He wants her to like him for who he is. When he gets rid of all of the stuff, this causes Arsenio Hall
To ask for money, which
causes Akeem's parents to come, which come and find him. And this sets up the climax of the movie, in which case Lisa's father now really likes Akeem because he's so rich. And Lisa feels betrayed that Akeem did not tell her the truth of who he was. The movie ends with us being back in Zamunda, and Akeem goes down the aisle, and when he flips up the veil, it's Lisa there to marry him.
well done. Happy ending.
And James Earl Jones gets out of the doghouse.
Get into it. Yeah, what do you guys want to talk about?
So, first thing I want to mention is that Andrew's right. This movie is not so much about the plot. It's what you would call performance comedy. So there's sometimes writer's comedy where it's about like the situations and like one thing leads to another and it's about the 1, 2, 3 of the comedy. But this is really about the performer. And Eddie Murphy is such a strong comedic performer. This movie's built around Eddie. And I thought that was a really good thing that you mentioned earlier about it's not so much about the plot because it's actually a pretty simple rom-com or fairy tale retold in modern day or 1988 modern day New York.
Queens.
Totally agree with
That's
that.
where you find a wife.
The thing I would say, though, that's a touch underrated there is I think that Arsenio Hall also did some really great job because, you know, he has a couple costume changes and plays a couple parts also, right?
Definitely. Yes, he does.
It's
and
not just Eddie Murphy.
Right. And Eddie doing this inspired Arsenio, and he just like got into it more and more himself. And so that infectious nature of, I mean, Eddie was so good on Saturday Night Live playing these different characters and stuff like that. It is the world that he had come out of. And even though he's probably, I think, 4 years past his departure of Saturday Night Live at this point, maybe 3, he clearly has come out of that. And I think this movie in particular, along with other movies later like Nutty Professor, show his ability to do those multiple roles so well. Eddie Murphy wrote this movie, and that's pretty cool because Arsenio Hall, I saw an interview on the internet on YouTube, and Arsenio Hall mentions that Eddie was literally writing this out of dating frustrations in real life, and he thought how nice it would be if since he was famous and rich and everybody knew who he was, if women didn't know that he was a star. And as the line says in the movie, he wants a woman to love him for who he is, not what he is and what he has. Pretty cool that he not only stars and carries this movie, but he's the writer, he's the creator of this. I don't know. What do you think on this one, Bryan, and the screenplay and this discussion, Arden?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, this is one of the movies that, like, before I was going to movies thinking, oh, I'm going to go see a comedy, oh, I'm going to go see this, before I was really classifying things, I remember this movie, which, just means that I saw it at a very young age. And that's why it was something I always tuned into. And it's always nice when you find something like that where it doesn't matter what time it is or what channel it's on. You're just like, oh, I'm going to stop and I'm going to watch this. So it really speaks to his skill. And, obviously he's a really funny guy. I grew up in a weird Eddie Murphy time where he was doing Nutty Professor and more PC stuff. So it was almost a culture shock thing for me to go back and listen to his 80s stand-ups and watch 80s movies where it was a lot different. And honestly, I like him better.
Because he can do different things.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a different range. It's kind of like Ice Cube doing a, nanny movie or something. It's just like, oh, I don't want to be shot at, so I'm going to do this.
So yes, he created it, but he's not credited with the screenplay. I believe that what happened is he created the idea, right? And he created essentially what were going to be scenes. But I think then they had two professional writers in terms of writing the words for everybody else.
That's right. That is correct.
Want to, make it sound like we were saying that he got the screenplay credits, because I don't believe he did.
No, he did not do that. You're right. But he did help create it.
Oh yeah, it's his movie from start to finish.
In the movie, Hakeem wakes up to orchestral music every day. He gets bathed by beautiful women. He has his own butt wipe for him. He has rose bearers drop roses at the feet of him every step he takes. He eats at a table that's so big he has to talk on an intercom to his dad at the other end of the table, which I don't know about you guys, but this reminds me of 1989 Batman, the dating scene between Ken Basinger and Michael Keaton. And he gets martial arts training. He seems to have friends to just play polo with on command. What do you think about this life in Zamunda? It's over the top, isn't it?
One of the weird things for me rewatching this movie is Arsenio Hall comes in to play polo. Eddie Murphy is dressed to play polo. And then they end up martial arts fighting.
Okay, I was going to say this for later, but did they delete a polo scene or something?
I don't know. It was one of the things that just jumped out at me. It's like, oh, they're going to play polo. Or something completely different.
No, they're going to do judo and martial, like an MC Hammer pants.
Oh.
So we're starting to talk about the performers here a little bit. Bryan, why don't you walk us through the cast real quick?
So first you have Eddie Murphy. He plays the title character, which is Prince Hakeem, but he also plays several other characters in the movie, which is one of the more fun things about watching the credits. You have Arsenio Hall as his best friend, Simi. You have James Earl Jones as King Joff, his father. John Amos plays Cleo McDowell, Lisa's father and Hakeem's boss when he comes to America. Madge Sinclair as the queen. We have Shari Headley as Lisa McDowell, who is the main love interest. We also have Paul Bates, who is one of my favorite characters on this, as Oa.
She's your queen.
We have...
So hold on, stop right there. His performance there was amazing. He does that so well. And it's not like he just does it for like 2 seconds. He just owns the song the whole time. He's amazing.
The entire wedding sequence at the beginning of that was fantastic. It actually added to the already fairly standard, like, I'm trapped by this, but the entire wedding sequence of him talking to his new bride, him talking to James Earl Jones, and just like words against a wall was really important for the whole movie. Just to quickly continue on, we got Eriq Lasalle as Daryl Jenkins. That's Lisa's boyfriend and the Soul Glow rep.
ER.
Man from ER. I'm one of those like 5 people that never watched that show. So
I'm one of the other 5 people who never watched that show.
We have 2 of 5 people that have never watched that show right here on this podcast. Frankie, who's the landlord.
That's a big sigh.
Also one of my favorite people, Frankie Faison. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the show Banshee, but he plays the kind of over-the-hill boxer that helps the protagonist out. Fantastic show if you ever get a chance. We also have...
So you watch Banshee, but you don't watch ER.
Yeah, because it's way better than ER.
And I've seen neither, so...
Sorry.
Couple other honorable mentions. We got Louie Anderson in this. Good to see him in a movie again, just because hadn't watched much with him in it recently, and it was like, oh man, I love that guy. We also have Samuel Jackson as the hold-up man. Really enjoyed that. So we have Eddie Murphy playing about 4 parts. You've got Arsenio Hall playing about 4 parts, and then you have all these other people that are just fantastic at their job. So hats off to the cast of this movie.
I'd like to jump in on the Samuel L. Jackson part, because my first thought on rewatching this movie is this is the only time I will get to see the donkey from Shrek beating up Mace Windu.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Here's a question for the listening audience. Was this the first movie that Samuel L. Jackson got to drop into MF?
I don't know. That is a good question. If you have an answer to that, write to us on our Facebook page. I would be curious to know if that is his first MF. So this is a really amazing movie for Eddie Murphy, as we mentioned, 4 roles. So he also did Clarence, the barbershop owner, which I love this character. I mean, I honestly could have used more Clarence, the barbershop owner. I don't know about you guys.
I think if they ever did a spin-off movie, it just needed to be that barbershop.
I'm pretty sure there's some deleted scenes, because I'm pretty sure that I knew somebody that actually owned the movie, and where it like has the deleted scenes, because I'm pretty sure there's more stuff with him.
I got the most ghetto DVD of this ever that had no features. It like literally had like a list of credits that you could scroll through, which is at the end of the movie anyway, and I don't know who that helps. But this movie had nothing else on the DVD, and it's super not remastered either, I might add. Everything looked washed out. Like the beginning scenes of how beautiful Zamanda is, it's like, wow, it's remarkably gray and neutral.
I just want to say on the barbershop thing, since we were there, the conversation about boxers.
Yes.
I absolutely loved when he goes, Rocky Marciano. Anytime we get talking about boxers, white guy always has to bring up Rocky Marciano. And he goes, but he did beat Joe Louis.
I heard Joe Louis is 123 years old. I had a guy in the chair the other day. He told me he knows Joe Louis. He said he's 123.
That whole thing was fantastic.
So Eddie's not only playing one character in that, he's playing Hakeem's there, so he's 2 characters, and in addition to that, he's playing an old Jewish white man named Saul in the barbershop, which this is great too. Saul is hilarious. Like my first thought when I saw this guy was like, something's off about this guy. And I got pretty far along before I realized like the skin's kind of like pale and like not really lifelike or whatever. But it fooled me long enough to be like, what's up with this guy's face? And I didn't realize that was Eddie Murphy.
It's all Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, it is Eddie Murphy. So it was convincing enough to make me not think it was him. And part of that's just his performance is so good as a Jewish man.
Russ, on the dating scene at the bar, like when met all the women at the bar.
Yes. You
did realize that was Arsenio Hall, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Okay, just making sure.
It's credited in the movie as, like, if you read the credits, it says unattractive female clubgoer. So
preferences are subjective, Russ.
It's and then one more big one.
Do you like steak?
I just want to eat you all up, and your friend too.
You guys are getting close to getting me to hyena.
I love the fact that in this movie you literally have this like interview process for women. Like people are just sitting down and saying, "All right, here's what's up." Like I don't know how many bars you guys have been to in total, but how many times do you sit down and you just have like a battery of women come up and be like, "Let me tell you about myself."
I need a man who can please me, and not just for a couple of hours.
I mean, Frye, I have a full head of hair, so I have that happen all the time.
Ooh, ouch, ouch. I'm somewhere between Bryan and you, and that seems like it's painful at the moment. So,
I like the satellites to see me on a sunny day.
And the other Eddie Murphy role that's really great in this is the lead singer of Sexual Chocolate, the soulful band of Randy Watson. Which this might be the most convincing of all of the makeup jobs. I could tell it was Eddie by his voice, but I mean, it really does not look like Eddie.
I love the preacher.
Yeah, Eddie's the preacher also, right?
Yeah.
No, that's Arsenio.
Oh, that was okay.
Yeah, Reverend Brown is Arsenio Hall.
It's like when he has to pray to him, he's like, I know that Jesus is out there.
There is a God. There is a God. Ladies, turn around. There's a God.
And and then Arsenio is also the other man in the barber shop with the big thick glasses and the white beard and the really dark skin. He's also a huge ad in that scene. And you're right, Andrew. You mentioned that Arsenio is a big part of this movie as well. This movie wouldn't be very good if Simi wasn't there for Akeem to be going through this adventure with. And so it's really cool that you've got these two guys together, and they're both playing multiple roles and stuff like that. It's a huge selling point to the movie, to me, and it was for the producers as well. So I did think it was funny that Eddie Murphy said he was 21 years old in it.
I think that's probably because how long he'd been successful at that point.
Oh, and he is on fire at this point. Like I said, he leaves SNL in '84. And so he goes on to do 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, and then he has the amazing stand-up comedy special of Eddie Murphy Raw in 1987, the year before this. So this is peak Eddie Murphy. He has been dominating in the 80s, and he's at the top of his game here. So,
and at the same time, wasn't the Cosby Show #1? If not, it was one of the top 5 shows, right?
Yeah. So we're talking about the cast here a little bit. I thought it was interesting. Eddie Murphy, on several occasions, said that he would read or hear in interviews and stuff like that this is the highest-grossing black comedy. And he'd constantly say it's kind of funny because, Coming to America would have 3 times the grossing of whatever the other movie that they were talking about. But it's funny that people never considered Coming to America black comedy. But if you go down, look at the cast list, it's almost entirely black actors. And so he's got a good point. Something about this doesn't feel like it's only for black people. It extends to everybody. So
I don't view black comedies as just for black people. I don't view white comedies as just for white people, because I don't think Superbad is only for white suburban kids, right? Sure. Just in the same way, Coming to America, Friday, so many, we can just list so many. They're not just for people of that race or ethnicity. They're for everybody. And I think that Coming to America is just a fantastic example of that. Like, I've always viewed it as a black comedy just because of how many black actors are in it. But I've always viewed it as one of the best comedies of all time, period.
Well, in the words of Tyler Perry, hallelujah.
Okay, so I would be willing to argue that personally, I have a hard time with the Tyler Perry stuff.
That's where I was going with this.
Yeah.
What was it? DeAndre Black has man, it's tough being black. You got to see every Tyler Perry movie 3 times. Cuba Gooding Jr. is the boy getting his hair cut in the barber shop, and it's kind of a shame because he had his scene cut where he actually got to speak. He doesn't have any money to pay for his haircut, so Clarence angrily just takes out at the buzz cutter and cuts a huge patch out of the boy's hair and tells him to get out of there. Why is this not in the movie?
You know what would have been so much better?
No, what?
Is if Clarence had said, "Show me the money."
Oh, that would have been
Ooh.
good.
That was about 7 years too early for that quote.
One of my favorite pieces here that Frye did not mention also is that we have Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy, who are Mortimer and Randolph Duke from a previous Eddie Murphy and John Landis directed movie, Trading Places. And so I love that movie, and to see the rich people who end up falling on hard times at the end of that, having all their money taken away from them after they try to scheme Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd's character. It's funny to see the crossover into this here as Hakeem hands them a wad of money, feeling sorry for them, and they're back.
Thanks for snagging my look for this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, I really love Trading Places. Anything I can do to get you guys to watch movies regarding stock market and future prices trading, I'm totally down for.
Andrew's an economist. We didn't mention this.
That's why we need to do Hot Shots Part 2. I loved you in Wall Street.
So what do we think about John Landis, the director, Andrew?
I'm torn because when I look at his IMDb, I'm like, my God, he started out on just one heck of a run, and casting Eddie Murphy for Trading Places was amazing. And then, there's the quote by Eddie Murphy that's basically after that, Landis had 3 bombs in a row, and Eddie did what you just mentioned, which is one of the greatest. I would say that Eddie and Tom Cruise are basically up there for the 2 best runs in a short period of time of movies. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple other people, but they're both on this short list, and that's what you're talking about. Eddie hired John Landis for this movie. And I feel like that Landis got more credit for it than he probably deserved, because on rewatch, he over-directed it.
Okay, he over-directed it. Tell me more on that. Why do you say he's over-directing?
That opening scene, if it was done by a director nowadays, would have been almost, I want to say, around half the time.
Okay, so you're saying that he doesn't have much discipline in terms of editing.
At least not in this, particularly at the very beginning of it. What I got from rewatching it and really thinking about it in that, perspective, was he was jealous of Eddie in the sense of that he wanted to make sure he had his stamp on it. So he did some scenes that took too long, and that took away from Eddie's screen time. The whole point of what you said earlier about we should have had more barbershop stuff, I'm pretty sure they shot more barbershop stuff. It's just that Landis wanted to take too long on the first part of some of his stuff, and we didn't get enough Eddie.
Interesting. I think I see a trend of where you might say some change one thing later. But Bryan, how do you feel about John Landis's oversight on this movie?
I'm going to take it from a career perspective because there are 4 movies that sum up his career for me. Animal House, Spies Like Us, Coming to America, and Beverly Hills Cop 3. I'm more than willing to fight anybody who says that Beverly Hills Cop 3 wasn't the best one, because it was.
Oh, we're about to fight then.
Oh, let's fight, because I loved the Alphabet Murders. That was my favorite action comedy of its time.
Russ, would you at least agree that Beverly Hills Cop 3 is hands down the best third in an action comedy movie ever?
Yeah, there's a lot of qualifiers on that, but if you're hitting me off the top of my head, sure.
Okay, I'm just trying to make peace between you guys. We don't need fighting.
Okay, no,
It's just it's just because there's not a bad boy.
We will fight each other. It will happen after the show. We will meet in the middle of the country at the exact midpoint between us, which is probably somewhere in Indiana or maybe Illinois.
I'll see you in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Frye will beat the soles of your feet with his face.
Meet me there at 3 a.m. I will fight you to the death.
It's going to be a big grandstand event because they don't have an NFL team anymore.
No, we can't fight to the death. We need you on the show. Another good one that you pointed out, Frye, you said the 4 movies that define his career. He's actually got even more than that. Did you say Blues Brothers by chance?
No, he didn't.
I didn't like that movie.
Boo!
I'm saying the 4 movies that that really defined it for me.
Okay. And then another really good one that he did, which is completely out of genre because he's doing mostly comedies here. He's also got an American Werewolf in London. So
Thank you. That was what I was going to mention. I was like, really? You didn't mention American Werewolf in London? But I think we also have to kind of look at Landis's failures if we're going to talk about him. And just,
And there's a lot of those too.
And I mean, and also in addition to that, he was a writer on American Werewolf in London, Clue, the movie Clue, and Blues Brothers 2000. So,
okay.
So you like Blues Brothers 2000?
sure, why not? Like, I'll take
we
that.
Okay, I was going to say we could get into a real long conversation about Clue.
It's okay. Hey, he's done an amazing job. He's a high school dropout who, he's an interesting guy. Like he said at age 8, he went to a movie with his mom. He's like, who made that? And she goes, what do you mean? And he's like who's in charge of all of that? And his mom told him a director, and he just absolutely fell in love with it. And he's like, so from age 8, he was on a drive to do this. And so he actually dropped out in high school and went over to Yugoslavia to work on a movie for very little money. And I guess his mom's just like, sure. I don't know about you guys, but my parents wouldn't let me do that. So
I figured that what you wanted to do in high school was start a band called Sexual Chocolate.
The spinoff, Sexual White Chocolate.
Okay, Jason Williams.
And here's my lead guitarist, Macadamia Nut.
So there's an interesting wrinkle to the creation of this movie. There's a lawsuit that's pretty interesting here where it's Buchwald versus Paramount. Art Buchwald filed a suit in 1990 against the film's producers. Again, this movie made a ton of money, which can make you a target for such things. But he claimed that he had a 1982 script about a rich, despotic African ruler who comes to America. Paramount did pick up Buchwald's script, and Landis was actually set to be the director, and Eddie Murphy was set to be the lead. After 2 years of stalled out development, Paramount then abandoned the project in March of 85. And so 2 years after that, in 87, Paramount began working on Coming to America, a story written by and based on Eddie Murphy's writings. So Buchwald actually won breach of contract, and they settled out of court, and he got money. I don't want to diminish any of Eddie Murphy's creativity in this, but there does seem to be a little something.
Yes, but first off, the first thing you said was despotic. There's nothing that we see from the King of Zamunda that says he's despotic. That just sounds like there's pretty much like the king, like the royal family in England, right?
Yeah.
A little more obvious as opposed to being the British sense of humor where they hide the fact that, about the washing of the royal penis. In Africa, they're a little more upfront. I did not know about that. You kind of threw me out. You kind of surprised me on that one.
No, I mean, I love Eddie Murphy. I think he's a great, and you're right. I think the other part of what Landis said that Eddie had done here was he said it's essentially Cinderella in an interview. He said he took an African prince coming to America looking for his bride. And I think that that's the part of the Buchwald part of the story that wasn't there. I'm not at all wanting to say that Eddie Murphy plagiarized, but the premise was all lined up. The director was there, Eddie was there. And it was 2 years prior to Coming to America. So, as Andrew alluded to, Eddie Murphy and John Landis have a huge breakdown in this. They actually enjoyed working with each other on Trading Places, so they were happy to come together. Eddie said that he brought Landis in for this project. And, Landis recalled that there were differences in working with Murphy on the two movies. He said the guy working on Trading Places was full of energy. He was curious and funny, fresh and great. The guy on Coming to America was the pig of the world. And he basically was saying he was a egocentric, argumentative, difficult guy to work with. And I mean, that sounds pretty mean until you hear what Murphy says of Landis, where he says they had a tussling confrontation. It didn't come to blows, but the personalities just didn't mesh. He was directing me in Trading Places when I was starting out as a kid, but he was still treating me 5 years later like a kid during the making of Coming to America. I hired him to direct the movie, and I was going to direct Coming to America myself, but I knew Landis had 3 effed up pictures in a row, and his career was hanging by a thread. After the Twilight Zone trial, I figured this guy needed me, and so when we did Trading Places, I gave him a shot. I went out of my way to help this guy. He effed me over, and he got a hit picture on this resume now because of me, and he made over $200 million on a film, as opposed to coming off of a couple of effed up movies, which is where I'd rather see him be right now. So pretty strong language from Eddie Murphy too.
I'm a little curious because he then proceeded to have like 2 other movies with him.
Well, yeah, they did Beverly Hills Cop 3.
So I guess they got over it. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, well, but Beverly Hills Cop 3 was 1993, right?
yes,
This was 88. They were already pissed at each other by the time it came out, right?
Right.
So they went through all of the press junket and everything being nice because it's both their pocketbooks. But I'm pretty sure all of those quotes came out, say, 6 months to a year after the movie was, you know what I mean? Once Oscar season was over.
I don't know when these came out and what the settings were, but they were clearly mad at each.
I'm thinking that, like, I'm just guessing here, but 3 years go by, they sit down, they talk to each other. Like Frye said earlier, Beverly Hills Cop 3 is an amazingly good movie, and we almost never get really good movies as the third movie in something, unless it's like Lord of the Rings, where the third movie's already set up to be the best, right?
Yeah, Fellowship of the Ring was the best movie in that series.
Titanic 3 was amazing.
Cruel Intentions 3.
Oh, wow, we're going deep cuts on this.
Anyway,
I never made it past 2. 2 was just destructive. It's all downhill. It's like Sharknado 6.
so one thing I wanted to ask or bring up about John Landis was I actually didn't think there was a lot of style in his direction of the movie. So not to pile on him more like Andrew was doing, but I think that other than looking at the globe that then transitions to a map, that then transitions to the American flag and then goes to the airport, which was a really nice scene as they're carrying like conspicuously like tons of luggage to the airport saying like, remember, they can't know I'm royalty. And like they have like a caravan of people carrying their luggage and while they're dressed in like really nice coats. That was the best moment of like style in the movie. I like the Soul Glow commercial like as they walk down in the street, but I'll be honest with you, I also am with Andrew in that I didn't think that they did a good job of finding these interesting little rich moments of New York and sticking them in there. Like if you look at a lot of my favorite comedies, such as Animal House that Landis did, there's small stuff going on and it makes the movie a lot more rich for rewatches. And I don't see that here per se.
I will agree completely with, I guess, Eddie Murphy's take on this in terms of, you know, his criticisms, because I don't want to say he carries the movie because obviously they're contributing actors like Arsenio who really make this movie great, but there's nothing ancillary about this movie that I really care about. Like it's all about his interactions with the people around him, and it makes it fantastic.
Well, so one of the reasons why I think that the movie had the success it did, and why I mentioned the Cosby Show earlier, is, well, let's contrast the McDowells with Friday for a moment, okay? Like the McDowells are upper middle class. You know, they're well-to-do, and we don't always see that side in black comedies, right? So I think that's one reason why it did resonate well, is because in just the realm of the African American community, we see different classes of people. We see poor people, we see upper middle class, and then we see the stinking filthy rich, right? And I think that's one reason why the movie resonates so well. And as you put it earlier, you don't think of it as a black comedy, you just think of it as a comedy because it demonstrates that class structure that we're oftentimes used to seeing just from pretty much an entirely black cast.
That's probably a big part of the reason why you're right. It doesn't get categorized as such, despite the cast. So I do want to ask you, Bryan, what do you think of Zamanda, the palace there?
I mean, I know they were under constraints for what visuals they have at the time, but the thing that upon rewatching really hit me was at first it looks like Switzerland, and then as they get closer it looks like India, but at no point in time would I have said, yep, that's in Africa.
Africa is a rather massive continent. My point is that we think of Africa as what we typically as like one thing or maybe two things. Africa is as diverse of a continent, probably even more so than the United States, North America is. So in that sense, I could see it.
I didn't have any issues with the landscape per se, other than the fact that it did seem very produced, if you know what I mean. The fly into the castle was very I was very aware I was watching a movie, if you know what I mean. I wasn't fooled, but I mean that's 80s effects, and that's okay.
And Frye, you do probably have a point about palm trees.
Yeah, I mean,
it seemed like they mixed a lot of different things that they thought, okay, this makes it look exotic.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's the thing in Austin Powers when he's like, amazing how much this looks like Southern California. Because
yeah. Yeah.
Right. And look, I mean, I understand that there are mountain ranges in Africa that are snow-capped. It's not that is a piece. I'm just saying that if they're trying to display a vibe, I just felt like they cut and pasted like 4 or 5 things together that don't exist together to make it look exotic.
So for me, the palace, and I'm gonna have to again, I'm gonna put my architecture nerd moment on here. The Zamanda Palace is a dark era for architecture for me. It's that 80s postmodern eclectic pomp. It's just like the turrets are all different kinds. You got like Middle Eastern turrets with like semicircular domes and a pineapple looking kind of thing stuck on top of it. You go inside, there's molding everywhere there's different clashes of different kinds of arches that don't go with everything. And that's so 80s postmodernism where they were revolting against modernism. And then everyone's like, I'm going to take all this old stuff, I'm going to put it together, and it's not going to be right. It's going to be funky. It's going to be weird. It's going to have lots of splashy colors, and the palace does have all these aquamarines and pinks and stuff like that. And all I can say is I wouldn't want to live in that palace architecturally. And here's a fun thing. As they're getting out of the JFK airport, you see in the distance over his shoulder, there's an absolutely iconic piece of modern architecture. It's the 1962 TWA Flight Center designed by Eero Saarinen, which is today a hotel that you can stay at. And that's my favorite piece of architecture in the movie, not the palace. So,
just in case, I know we talked about Andrew's profession here earlier, but just in case for our listeners, this is a one-off. Russell is an architect. In case you didn't gather that.
The second greatest regret of his life behind the red box was not starting a band called Sexual Chocolate. Instead, he became an architect.
Yeah, that is the second one I will regret.
That was Sexual White Chocolate and the Macadamia Nuts.
So, what do we think about Queens? Is this neighborhood crappy enough for you?
Well, the funny thing is their apartment's in Brooklyn.
It is.
This is one of those little things where they're like, oh, by the by.
Yeah, but what does LL Cool J say? I represent Queens. She was raised out in Brooklyn.
Well, God, you asked me a question. You didn't give me a chance to answer it. But she's doing it. She was doing it and doing it well.
Eddie asks for a meager apartment, and he gets blood on the walls, caution tape from a murder scene. There's body tape on the floor from a murder victim and a dog murder victim as well. And there's rats in the apartment, litter all over the ground, nasty mattress shoved in the corner.
The biggest issue with any movie or any TV show shot in New York or San Francisco, because of rent control, they are not accurately showing what the size of these apartments are. That apartment, for as nasty as it is massive compared to what it would be.
Ooh, good point.
I mean, have you ever stayed? Have you guys ever
Andrew is
stayed
an
in New York?
economist.
Have you guys ever stayed in New York?
I have.
Yes.
In Queens, I might add, but it was really nice. So my experience of Queens is really different than this part of Queens.
Friends, when they show this massive apartment, you're like, yeah.
Well, I actually asked one of my friends who lives in Queens now. I said, my perception of Queens is very different from this movie. Is this in any way even remotely accurate? And Queens is, first of all, he said, is the largest borough of New York, so it has a lot of variation in it. And particularly, he did mention in the 80s and late 70s that New York did have neighborhoods that weren't so nice. And while he personally wasn't alive in there then, he does know people who were around at that point in time. And New York was not a happy place. And I did watch a documentary on the Ramones, one of my favorite bands, and they grew up in Queens, and it was a rough neighborhood. There were drug dealers around, there were thieves, there were people fighting in the streets, and you had to be tough. And so even though this is not at all Queens today, so if anybody's watching this movie gets an idea that Queens is this way. It's a much happier city than it was then. So,
Well, everywhere is safer now. We have cell phones.
what do you think?
Cameras everywhere.
And one last piece of set design that I got to talk about is the Mcdowell's restaurant. This is actually a Wendy's that they had closed down for renovation. So they used it. And this is pretty funny, but the McDowell's corporate headquarters was called and okayed for this. You know, they cleared it and everything like that. But I guess some of the local franchise owners drove by and got really mad and were yelling and saying they're gonna get a lawyer and sue them for everything they have, and they were taking photographs and threatening them, and so they had not gotten the word out to the local McDonald's managers.
The owners of the franchises.
That's
yeah.
right. And so if I had been the director, I would have been like, no, see, I've got the golden arcs. This is a McDowell's.
I just want to say one last thing on that, Russ.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you imagine if they brought back the Arc Deluxe?
I love it.
This is coming from the guy that is going to be perpetually addicted to the McRib when and if it is available.
Oh, how I feel about McDonald's is best put by Wyclef.
Go ahead.
Because that's when they bring out the McRib here every year. I'm gone until November.
All right. So what do you guys think about the wardrobe and costumes? We got a lot of very amazing pieces in the dance scene. This is the one that really jumps off the page at me. What do you guys think about the wardrobe and your takeaways?
Oh, my favorite, or I shouldn't say my favorite quote, but one of my favorite quotes from it, is that velvet? He's rubbing on the lion skin.
Yeah, he's wearing like a lion scarf.
It's like, oh, is that velvet?
Yeah.
He's like, fantastic facial expression on James Earl Jones.
Yeah. So, Andrew, any thoughts on the makeup or wardrobe?
Yeah, well, so on the wardrobe side, I think that it's kind of hard to address the wardrobe without mentioning the fact that this movie made a huge amount of money in 1988 America, which is, predominantly white. And let's just be clear, white people and black people dress differently. Like, I'm not saying anything weird or crazy, right?
That's fair.
Correct.
And that's one of the things that I think is so interesting is that the movie discusses in that same class aspect the different variations of dress in the African American community between the upper middle class versus the middle. You know what I mean? They still have the same issues that white people do regarding how we dress regarding class issues. And that's what my big takeaway from the outfits and the soul glow, right? All these different things, because soul glow is something that none of us understand, right?
I had curly hair. I could use Soul Glow. I could pull the Jerry curls off.
Russ,
Actually, Russ, you actually had very close to that hairstyle in high school.
There you go.
Wow. Okay, so maybe that wasn't the best example, but but I really do appreciate some of the different clothing styles. What it reminds me of is I was at a mall in Prince George County in Maryland, which is it's the most affluent, one of the most affluent African American communities in the United States, and so I was the Eddie Murphy at that mall. But it's a really nice mall. It's just that the clothing is explicitly for the African American community that lives there, and so the clothes are different. And I think that this movie does a pretty good job of showing that in that place and time.
Oh, that's a good point. And Arsenio, in his interviews that he was talking about making of Coming to America, was saying that he and Eddie would have to sit in a chair for hours with straws up their noses while they had the makeup applied to them. And they said, you get really uncomfortable in those chairs and stuff. So there was a lot of work to make these guys look like completely other people. That's why they got nominated for an Oscar. I mean, it really is impressive work on there. And the different wardrobes that they give these different characters are a big part of that. I really like the barbershop guys. You get their rugged nature by what they're wearing. And I mean, Clarence is such a bombastic character who, I mean, he wears this really weird shirt that like changes from stripes to polka dots back to like white and then brown. And then like, it's the strangest shirt you'll ever see. And it's so perfect that Clarence is wearing it. So... And the other one that I thought was really interesting was just the African wedding was just everything was full of colors. And then they had the dancers come in with the feathers and they did this amazing choreography. It was really cool. So
on that, did it kind of remind you of Black Panther in a way? I mean, in a really positive way in that like trying like so often in America, we have this real negative view of Africa. Because we always see the, Ethiopia really poor side. And that's just not what an entire continent is, right? And I think one of the reasons why Black Panther was so successful is it said, hey, like, let's try to celebrate the positive aspects of the culture. And like they do, there are spots where they have a lot of wealth and they've got really nice stuff, which is true. And I feel like that I saw a lot of parallels between Coming to America and Black Panther regarding like the wedding scene and the celebration of the beauty of the culture.
That's a good way to tie it to a current day movie, which is also nominated for several Oscars. We'll see how that does in Oscar season coming up. So, Brian, what'd you think about? They said let's dress like real New Yorkers, and they come out of a sporting goods store with a Jets jacket and a Mets jacket, and they've got 800 buttons pinned on them.
So I feel like the wardrobe for them being real quote unquote New Yorkers is probably fairly accurate for someone coming to America in the quotes of like, oh, he said it. But it's one of those things that, you see a certain image and their dressing up that way would be the equivalent of someone coming to LA for the first time and feeling like they need a thong and roller skates. So they're just taking it to the polar extreme of, sure, some people do dress that way, but it's just one of those things where they're harping on a stereotype, people would take to the extreme.
Let's talk about the soundtrack here a little bit. So we talked about She's Your Queen to Be. This is a great song. Andrew, what do you love about this a cappella moment where he talks about being able to completely free of infection, used at your discretion, and just ridiculous lines in this song?
See, I didn't even hear the words so much as, I mean, yes, I did, but it's his performance. Don't you ever hear somebody singing and you don't really even care so much what the words are? You're just like, I just want to hear that person sing
all the time.
No, I'm a horrific lyricist. Like the first thing I hear in a song is what they're saying.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We could sit down and analyze those lyrics and I would totally think it's fantastic. But you're asking what I like got from it at the time and what I'll get from it the next time I watch. Don't you just like that dude can sing?
So an interesting one I see on this is the South African band that sings during the opening credits as Lady Blacksmith, Black Mambazo, is the same band that appears on Paul Simon's Grammy Award-winning album Graceland from a few years earlier, and they received worldwide recognition on that. So here they performed The Lion Sleeps Tonight, which is a cover at the beginning of the movie. So, Brian, what do you think about the super 80s music? For me, it was nails on a chalkboard, especially as the credits roll and like you got pop, 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 bang, bang. We're coming to America.
There are positives and negatives to take away from 80s music. I'm not in any way, shape, or form throwing the entire decade under this movie, but they did not pick... it's an
80s comedy.
Using Coming to America is a little on the nose, but sure. But it's not exactly like they pulled out the best of the best for, what they're playing here. They're making a joke out of it, much in the same way that like Hot Tub Time Machine does. It's not that they're grabbing on to the best of the 80s. They're grabbing onto the jokes of the 80s.
I actually thought one other thing I want to talk about the soundtrack was Randy Watson and his performance with Sexual Chocolate. Which is sorry, I can't say it with a straight face.
No, we understand. You like you wish you'd been sexual chocolate, not an architect. Go ahead.
But I wish the lyrics had been a little funnier. He nails the soulful lounge singer kind of mode so well, and he gets the mannerisms. But actually, if you listen to the lyrics again, there's nothing that funny in them. And I kind of thought, in the same way that they did "She's Your Queen" to be, and had some ridiculously obtuse lines in there, I kind of thought it would be funny if Randy Watson had gotten a little bit of that in there. And I love the hecklers in there. It's like, that boy can sing.
You crazy.
It's like, he's real good at being terrible. So look for this, Andrew. Are there any fun moments that you want to point out?
Yeah, I actually think that the funnest moment is Arsenio Hall as the ugly woman. I don't like that terminology, but when Arsenio Hall as the woman is hitting on Eddie Murphy, he then says, or she then says, "I'm into the group thing." And the look on Arsenio Hall's face of being hit on by a woman that is him, but the idea is it's supposed to be a woman that looks like him, he sells it. Like, I don't know how many takes they took to get that, but I legitimately believe, I paused and rewatched it. Like, I went back and rewatched it, that the look on his face is the look that any guy would have when you're like, okay, I've seen a chick who before, looked like one of my friends. Like, it happens, Like, if you've got a buddy, his sister's face might look a little bit like his. But when you have a chick that looks like you hitting on your buddy and then say, "Ooh, let's do a group thing," the look on his face was real. Like, that's what I imagined somebody would actually experience. And that's part of the reason why I love Arsenio Hall in this movie.
The good one. Brian, look for this.
Mine was going to be the two homeless guys. But I will say this. If you watch closely during the Cuba Gooding Jr. scene, he doesn't actually ever cut any of his hair. So it's actually funny that if they cut out a scene where he can't pay for it, they didn't actually cut any of his hair in the first place.
I have one like that that's not necessarily what I was going to go with, but Daryl also cheers for both teams in the basketball game. It just really drove me nuts. Like, the white team scores and he goes, "Yeah!" And then, the red team scores, he's like, "In your face!" I'm like, what? He's just like, "Yay, a basket! Yay, another team scored a basket! Yay, another basket!"
It's not that he has a rooting interest in either team. He is somebody who particularly values offense in basketball. So when he sees a good offensive play, he roots for that. Doesn't he seem like the kind of guy that when you play basketball with, that he would be a ball hog?
Definitely. So another interesting makeup story here is Eddie would dress up as Saul on the set and would totally like to mess with people. Like, he would meet the head of Paramount Studios, and John Landis would be like, "Hello, this is Saul." And the guy's like, "Yeah, so what?" And he'd be messing with him and talking to him as in this old Jewish man. It's like, "Oh, who's the man in this movie? Eddie Murphy? I don't like him. He's a very vile man. He uses very vulgar language. I don't like him. He's no good. He's no good." And he's like, "Who is this guy?" And then Eddie would start cracking up in his, awesome laugh. And then he'd be like, "Oh my gosh, is that Eddie Murphy in there?" And he's like, "Yep." And so Eddie had a real fun time in these characters. Another one that he did when he was Randy Watson, he went up to John Amos, who was Lisa's father and his boss in the movie. But he goes up to actor John Amos, dressed up in that makeup, and he came up to him, asking him, he's like, "What do you do here?" And he's like, "I'm an actor." And he goes, "Who was in your movie? I don't remember. I've never heard of you, John Amos." And he goes, Eddie Murphy goes, "Oh, he's a good actor. He's a good actor. Why have I never heard of you, though?" And he gets a little more aggressive, and he's confrontational. He's like, "I don't think you really belong here. Should we get a security guard? I don't think you belong on this lot." And John Amos is getting mad, and he goes, "Look here." And then Eddie starts cracking up again, and then John's just said, "I started belly laughing. This guy, he totally had me. I did not realize this was Eddie Murphy." And so Eddie, there are several stories like this where Eddie would just totally get people in his makeup.
Okay,
That's
so
that's 100% of what I would do too.
so remind me real quick, John Amos. What else is what do we know him from outside of this movie?
So let's see. IMDb's definitely has him under Die Hard 2, Lockup, Good Times. He definitely has an episode in 30 Rock. I definitely recognize him from that. Man, I don't know. Beyond that,
I'll have to check it out. I know him from something.
another really great look for this moment occurs for me when I had happened to see Crocodile Dundee 2 on TV about maybe 3 weeks ago, and I got sucked in as we were talking about Coming America. You catch 15 minutes here, catch 15 minutes there, and I ended up watching most of the movie. And so when we came to watch Coming to America, I was like, man, this movie has a lot in common with that. They're both made at the end of the 80s. They're both made in 88. And turns out they even came out less than a month apart. One's at the end of May, the other's in June. So Crocodile Dundee 2 did come out right before Coming to America, but Coming to America like thrashed it in the box office. And there's a lot of similarities, but I gotta say, this movie is a lot better than Crocodile Dundee 2, which I actually enjoy Crocodile Dundee 2, but Crocodile Dundee 2 is playing off of stereotypes of like, oh, I'm an Australian and this guy's a crossdresser and he's hitting on me and I don't know what's going on, or, oh, that's a black guy and I don't come into contact with American black guys. This movie is about a man from a land far away coming here trying to, fall in love. In this case, Crocodile Dundee comes and follows the woman that he already knows from Australia and wanting to, take her back home with him. Whereas, Coming to America has so much more going for it in terms of the multiple characters and all the other things that we've been talking about here. But it's a very interesting compare and contrast, and they happened very close to the same time with each other. So
I would argue that Coming to America will stand up much better through the test of time than most comedies of the last 20 years.
I do like the end subway scene of Crocodile Dundee too. It's very sweet. So, where everybody's like crammed in the subway. So, but anyway,
Crocodile Dundee is another movie that the sequel is better than the original.
I certainly see it on TV more so. My for whatever reason, I merged both of them into the same movie until I sat down and watched it again because I was like, oh, I'm coming in the second half of this movie. And then I was sitting there for about an hour and a half thinking, I was like, how long is this movie again? And Mary, told me, she's like, you're thinking of the first movie that I was like, really? I thought this was the first movie. She goes, no.
Yep.
Oh, I had something I wanted to say regarding Coming to America is one of the reasons why I think it did so well box office wise. You guys are all familiar with the Mount Rushmore concept, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So for me, when it comes to stand-up comedians, the Mount Rushmore is Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle, Richard Pryor, and George Carlin. I would argue that this is the most successful movie from one of the Mount Rushmore people in that, like, he was in control of this, as we've stated earlier, right? This wasn't trading places. This was his idea, right? And I think that's part of the reason is he's one of the greatest comedians the world's ever seen.
Definitely in the 80s for sure. Like he might have been on top of it all in the 80s. So
No. I'm saying we like his stuff. Have you watched his stand-ups now? They're still great. Hold up. You ain't got no ice cream because you ain't got no money because your mama's on the welfare. Like, it's hilarious. It still holds up today.
Definitely. For sure. And I mean, you're right. It definitely does. And
I got McDonald's.
McDowell's.
It would have been funnier had Eddie Murphy Raw come out after that, which I don't think it did. I think it was like 83 versus 88. But had Eddie Murphy Raw and he said, I got McDowell's. That would have been hilarious.
So how does this movie affect you, Andrew?
I'll bring it back to the quote you kept mentioning in terms of him wanting to find somebody that loves him for him.
Yes.
That's kind of the flip side, because in many of the movies, it's the woman wanting to find a man that loves her for her. And it's not necessarily the norm to see a guy expressing his feelings that way and wanting romantic love in that way, but it's a really positive message. So I think in that sense, I would say it's probably been a large influence on me in terms of, how I search out my life. So
that's high praise. Yeah, and that is an excellent point too. Bryan, how does this movie affect you?
I miss watching movies like this when I watched them the first time, because when I watched this the first time, it was just a funny movie. Like, there was no racial connotation. I just got to watch a movie that was funny people being funny. And I do feel like today you have to add addendums in to how you view and, what you talk about with movies, instead of just having the enjoyment of funny people being funny. So it was just one of those things where I got to watch it and be like, man, that's obviously a different movie than I was used to based on the fact that I was watching it on television. But I don't know. It made me miss a little bit of the ignorance of youth.
I like it. That's another really good point too. And
I totally love what you just said there about you just enjoyed it, because it's the same idea with The Cosby Show. Is you weren't sitting there going, what's the color of their skin? You were just enjoying the skill of these entertainers telling their stories and entertaining you. And we weren't so worried about that, because we went, hey, if you're good, you're going to make us laugh. Eddie Murphy makes us laugh.
Yeah, huge fan.
like you said, he does a great job of pursuing he plays a character he's a noble character who wants, his intentions are good and his heart's in the right place. And so that's a positive role model. So, I mean, like you said, it's just, these are good characters. So for me, this movie actually reminds me of when I go into work every day. I have a really good friend who's from China, and he's from a completely different world of China. So he's from like Western China. It's not necessarily Beijing that you think of. And I mean, their house is heated by like fire that goes up under the floors, and they sleep on bags of rice. And, like they may not have sewage. Like somebody comes around with like a bucket and carries away the raw sewage down to the river. Like it's a different world that he is from. And so often he brightens our day up by just taking joy in the little things that we are so jaded on or don't fully appreciate. And so it's really fun to have somebody like that you can see your cultural differences and their cultural differences. And plus you get these great fish out of water comments, like, someone will be like, that's what she said. And he'll go like, look at you blankly and go like, who is she? And why did she say that?
So what are his thoughts on monster truck rallies?
I don't know, man. I just I gotta ask him on that one. But I mean, he's all the time confused by stuff that he does, and he has no shame. Like somebody will make a reference or whatever. It's like, is like you look like a pimp. He'll be like, what is a pimp?
Well, idioms are the hardest thing to learn in a language, right?
For sure. Yeah.
So getting to that idea, one of the things I love about living in Long Beach, not Palm Springs, is that Long Beach is the most diverse large city in the United States. Of the 50 largest cities in the country, it is the most diverse, and it's the only one that does not have a predominant ethnicity.
Interesting. Well, guys, I think it's time to do what I love to do most on this show. How about some superlatives? You ready?
I'm down
for it.
Andrew, MVP.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Are you for real?
Oh, yeah. Watch that scene again.
Okay.
He steals it.
Okay.
All right. When you watch that scene, instant for instant, that's what we're talking about. It's our Manny Pacquiao, our pound for pound, right?
Most valuable
Samuel
player.
L. Jackson.
Okay. I thought he was being sarcastic, but Bryan.
We were all excited for the rest of his career.
Bryan, MVP.
MVP is every character that Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall played that weren't their main characters.
Okay. For me, I'm just gonna go with flat out Eddie Murphy. Helped create this, multiple characters, great performer, had the charisma to make Hakeem simple character really enjoyable and likable, and that makes this movie work. So, best supporting actor.
Arsenio Hall.
Yeah. Bryan.
Gonna go straight James Earl Jones here. I loved the King. Like, being as intelligent as possible, but then also being as aloof as possible was a big thing in this movie.
There's a fine line between love and nausea. Oh, sorry. No, my best supporting actor is Arsenio Hall, but I do want to give a nod to John Amos. He was really enjoyable as Lisa's dad.
I also like Paul Bates, man. Paul Bates. Hats off to Paul Bates.
Well, you could go there and Hidden Gem, which is what we come to next. Hidden Gem. Oh.
What about Lisa, the actress playing her? I thought she had a really tough role to play because she is pretty and she's supposed to be smart, and she's put in kind of a tough situation acting wise because we're supposed to understand why she likes Eriq Lasalle beyond just the money, because if she just liked him for the money, then she wouldn't be the type of guy that Akeem would want, right?
Yes.
So she's like, I thought she did a pretty darn good job.
Shari Headley in the role of Lisa there. I am with you. She's pretty and she's got personality and she does a good job. They looked at casting at one point, Vanessa Williams in her part, which she certainly is beautiful, but I am really glad they didn't go that route because I think you're right. She has a lot of warmth and depth to her that I think she does a good job in this role.
I thought the scene where she best epitomized it is when he's going back and forth outside her office mopping.
Yeah.
And then when he's trying to talk to her and she's clearly like, I'm doing work, but she's just not a rude person. And so when like at the end of the scene, she still calls him by his name.
Good
She's
point.
just not like, oh, have a nice day. She's like, I don't remember if she said nice to meet you, Akeem, or
Well, he just got done saying it's like, when you think of garbage, you think of Akeem.
But she still did reiterate it, she had that warmth, that smile on her face, and I thought she really killed it, given a pretty difficult role where she could have just been kind of a wet blanket, and I feel like she tried to add some depth to it.
When no one else around you, say, "Baby, I love you."
Bryan, who is your hidden gem?
I'm gonna go with Samuel L. Jackson on this one, just because if you only knew what that career was going to give you later, wow. Like, this is one of the things that I love most about watching older movies and seeing bit part actors in small roles, because I'm like, this is going to be epic one day. And the only thing that's than seeing somebody that is well known in a smaller role in an older movie is actually seeing an actor flourish from square one. That's the fun part about watching movies like this, is when you go deep into the roster and you find someone who just destroyed it later on.
For my hidden gem, I'm going to go with Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy as Mortimer and Randolph Duke returning from the movie Trading Places. Andrew, what about you and your hidden gem?
Akeem's mom
has got it going on.
Oh, that's a nice pick.
I thought that given the way that the story works, she's actually the person who really helps drive the plot.
I like it. So if you had to recast somebody in this, and who would you put in their place, what one person would you recast? Andrew.
Ooh, the sister of Lisa.
Yep, Allison Dean?
Yeah.
She plays Patrice, but yes, Allison Dean.
If it was cast with somebody who, given his preference set, maybe was a touch more appealing initially, that it might have worked better. I'm not saying she's a bad actress. It's just probably the weakest spot.
I actually picked the same actress for that matter, and I put Denitra Vance in there. She was on Saturday Night Live in the 85 to 86 season where everybody got slashed afterwards, but she can do bubbly, ditzy, and a number of other things, and She might be a little bit old for the part, but I like her for this. Bryan, who is your recast?
My recast is the dad. I would hands down plug in Richard Pryor. I think that having him as the dad would just play off Eddie Murphy so well. Like, I feel like there may have been some, not necessarily script rewrites, but some ad lib stuff that really would have benefited this movie, where it just, I don't know. I'm such a huge fan of Richard Pryor that it just would have been a really funny dichotomy to have him play the mom or the dad.
Well, Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor do get together and work together in Harlem Nights, but general consensus is that movie was not what you wanted. What would your best shot of the movie be, Andrew?
It's the difference between watching that movie on TBS
Oh gosh. Okay.
or not.
Okay. The bath scene. Okay. Bryan, best shot.
This is going to be a weird thing. It was something that always kind of like tickled me, but it's when the king comes in to their old room and you've got him sitting, or the landlord sitting in the jacuzzi with a cigar, and they're having that interchange. And I always liked how that was shot, just from a standpoint of, you have someone who's royalty being told to enter a domicile, and the person who stays seated the whole time is the dirty landlord.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That has always been one of those, without mixing terms here, one of those trading places parts that I always really enjoyed.
And the camera there is like nice and low at his level, looking up at James Earl Jones, who's just like mad at the whole situation. Yeah, it's a good one. Dance number for me is the best one. And there's a particular shot where the camera's behind them on the throne, looking back at the crowd of dancers, not quite on axis, slightly off axis. It's a great angle, and the choreography there's amazing, and great job on that. So best scene, Andrew.
The culmination when Mr. Mcdowell is, wait a second, you're saying my daughter's not good enough? When he starts to get like angsty about this. Yeah, I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, that's a really good moment. You're right, for sure. Bryan, best scene.
I think the best scene for me was when they both walk out of their apartment building and all their luggage is gone, and then literally everybody around them is wearing their stuff. And they're like,
the toothbrush.
I'm beginning to suspect that these are the people who have stolen our luggage.
I love that scene. The whole thing. Hey man, you guys want to buy? He's already incorporated his coat to be able to hold and just like display various gold-plated toiletries. I loved that entire scene.
That is a good one. For me, I like the zany nature of when Cleo McDowell or Mr. McDowell puts on, or he's entertaining Akeem and Lisa. Meanwhile, he's also called Daryl over to the house and didn't cancel him. So Daryl's trying to ring the doorbell, and he's running back and forth, and like he answers the door and just closes it on his face, immediately says nothing, and Daryl's like, "What's up?" And he rings the doorbell again, and then like Mr. McDowell's like, 1 minute, and he runs back to the door, and like he's like, "Look, she's not interested. Don't you understand?" Slam. and Daryl tries a third time and rings the doorbell, and then like he falls down up the steps. He's so frustrated, and then he like, "Sick him, Donnie!" And like a little poodle runs out, like going after him. Just great scene. A lot of catastrophe. I everything's coming to a head. For me, this is my scene of the movie. So
all of that drove my dog nuts. I'm trying to watch this, and every time that dog came up, he was like, "Arr!" And I was like, nope, it's okay. It's on television. Don't worry about it.
Change one thing, Andrew.
The opening sequence. It's too long.
Okay. I remember you saying that before. Good. I figured this might be coming. So, Bryan, change one thing.
All of the zoom outs for landscaping of Zamunda.
Similar call, huh? For me, I'm actually going to add something. I want to add more bad things that happen to Simi, so that like Akeem's really loving this. bad things happen to Simi along the way. So I wouldn't mind seeing him get into trouble on his own while Hakeem's out getting or going on a date and having a great time. I'd like something bad to happen to Simi, so it just keeps getting worse and worse for him, more and more lopsided, and it's disproportionate. Like, I'm in love and this is wonderful, and the other guy's like, no, this really sucks. So I'd like to make that juxtaposition even greater than they did. So best quote of the movie, though.
I don't think I have a good answer for that.
Brian.
The royal penis is clean.
That's a strong one.
Especially since I'd never heard it. Like, you have to understand that when I rewatched this movie, I had never heard that line, and I lost my stuff on that. Like, I was cracking up hard. And Jess is like, you haven't seen that? And I'm like, no, I've only ever watched this on cable.
Yes.
Okay, so that would have been my answer, but I knew that's Frye's, so that's why I didn't say it.
Mine's going to be, freeze, you diseased rhinoceros pizzle.
That's a good one.
Okay, so favorite quote. Every time we talk about boxing, every white guy ever brings up Rocky Marciano.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Because it's true. We as a white male, we have nothing to stand on when it comes to boxing other than Rocky Marciano.
Another couple of noteworthy lines worth bringing up here are Lisa is falling in love with him, and he's going and dancing with her, and they're about to kiss, and she goes, what about Patrice? And Hakeem goes, I'm not interested in Patrice. What about Daryl? I'm not interested in Daryl either.
Also a good one.
That's fantastic.
And then another really great one. This is just Hakeem. Like this is again like this feels like something my friend from China would like do. He goes, "Sir, did you happen to catch the professional football contest on television last night?" No, I didn't, Hakeem. Oh, sir, the Giants of New York took on the Packers of Green Bay, and at the end, the Giants triumphed by kicking an oblong ball made of pigskin through the big H. It was a most ripping victory.
Boy, if you want to stay working here, lay off the drugs.
Yeah. And then another one, which is pardon the expletive here, is good morning, my neighbors. And then somebody goes, hey, F you. And he goes, yes, F you too. A lot of good lines. Comedies always have good quotes. So
yes.
We've come full circle, and it's been a long circle. But what would you rate this movie on a 5-star scale, Andrew?
4.8.
Okay. Well, I'll allow some decimals. That's fine. Brian.
I'm going to give it a solid 4. It is at its heart, it's an amusing movie that has some really hysterical parts, but it wasn't exactly one of those like side splitters that I was laughing the entire time.
I'm actually going to follow suit with Brian on this one and go 4 because I really enjoy this movie. It's just fun. It makes me happy. It's not like hilarious gut busting throughout the whole movie. And there's a lot of warmth and just sweetness to the movie that I really do enjoy. And so it's got a lot of heart, and that helps. But for me, it is just a very, very simple story. It is somewhat predictable, and the ending... Actually, I don't love the ending on this movie, as I mentioned earlier. I don't like the fact that they go all the way to Africa, and then his parents basically bring Lisa over. I just didn't like it.
It's a twist.
Yeah. I don't know. I saw that twist coming, and I would have preferred something more sincere. I honestly wish she had said yes on the subway. I don't know. For me, these are small things, but anyway.
Is it completely outlandish for me to call this a rom-com?
It is, which is perfect timing for Valentine's Day. So,
I just here's the thing. I've seen some serious comedies that slayed me. Like it hurt me inside because I couldn't laugh anymore. So in the department of what this really fills in, it's a rom-com that is for guys.
They did a survey around 2000. Remember in 2000, they were just doing surveys of everything, like what's the greatest book of all time, the most influential book, stuff like that. They did a really solid survey for the U.S. of what is the most romantic movie to women. Do you know what number 1 was?
Coming to America?
Officer and a Gentleman.
Mm.
There's only about 15 minutes of that movie that's romantic. The rest of the movie is a guy movie. I would argue Coming to America has a lot of similarities. Sure, it's a rom-com, but there's only about like 15 minutes of romantic. The rest of the movie is comedy.
Well, no, the whole thing is about a guy trying to woo a girl.
Interesting that you guys are talking about romantic comedies, because it's now time to pick our movie for next week. And being that we're so close to Valentine's, it's time to go and try a chick flick for the person you love. And so we asked our guest of next week, Chad Robinson, Brian's good friend. His wife helped select 3 movies for us. So it's going to be option 1, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days from 2003. And this Benjamin Barry is an advertising executive ladies man who is to win a campaign. He has to make a bet to make any woman fall in love with him in 10 days. Annie Anderson covers the How to Beat the Composure magazine and is assigned to write an article on how to lose a guy in 10 days. They meet shortly thereafter, and the bet is made. And option number 2, 10 Things I Hate About You in 1999. A pretty popular teenager can't go out on a date until her ill-tempered older sister does. Option number 3.
Oh, Taming of the Shrew, by the way.
Also true. Option number 3, 27 Dresses from 2008. After serving as a bridesmaid 27 times, a young woman wrestles with the idea of standing by her sister's side as her siblings marries the man she is secretly in love with.
I think we'll go with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
That's right. This one's for the ladies. So nothing says Valentine's Day like 3 guys talking about a chick flick. So, so anyway, thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. We really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming on in the future.
Yes, and Brian, thanks so much, as always. To all of you Lord, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, we invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe to us. Please rate us on iTunes. Those ratings help us grow the show and find new viewers, and those reviews help us find new listeners. Also, if you listen on Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast, give us a favorite, give us a like, spread the love. And then also give us a like on Facebook. We're getting closer to that 100 mark, and we would love to have that 100 mark eclipsed. And if you want to reach out to us, want to be on the show, write us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. As always, thanks for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Brian?
With Who Framed Roger Rabbit, good old Kathleen Turner, Jessica Rabbit quote, "I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way."